today's video we talk about the iPhone 13 Pro. Is it enough of an upgrade this year over the 12? Is it worth you spending your money on this phone, or should you wait until next year? Let's get into it. The first thing is this is the second year of this new design change. This new design change started with the iPhone 12. This is where it's more of a squared off design, where it used to be more of a rounded design. It is actually a little heavier this year. That is one of the points that is better with iPhone 13 over the 12. What was included this year was a bigger battery. So it's about 11% more battery in the Pro, and I think it's 18% more battery in the Pro Max. So it's, in my day-to-day use, I feel like it is definitely noticeable. And I think another thing that leans into that is the next point, and that is the Pro Motion. So the Pro Motion is the 120 hertz resolution refresh rate. Finally, the iPhones get this feature that Androids for a long time have had. iPhone does a really good job at it. So not only does it just stay at the 120 hertz refresh rate, or maybe dip down to maybe 60 and 120, it can actually scale all the way down to 30 hertz depending on what you're looking at. So it's actually doing a really good job on helping the battery. I think that's another big point in what's helping these phones a lot on the battery. But the question still becomes, is this device worth getting? Well, here's a couple other things that I want to go over of what I think may be a reason for getting this. So another point to this is a cinematic mode. Cinematic mode is a new feature to the cameras array this year, and in combination with the A15 processor, Apple is able to essentially, if you had like a DSLR camera or actually a devoted camera, you can do video recording of bokeh and focus on the forefront or the background of a individual or a item or something. Change your focus of the items you're looking at. So this is something else that the iPhone offers now. Big exception to this though, and it is a little limited on what you can do with it, and be aware that it only exports at 1080p. So if you want to do this at 4K, as soon as you use this feature, it reduces your resolution to 1080. Still is a great quality, but just be aware of that. If you want this in 4K, if you want a feature like this and really want to use something with this, really depends on what you're trying to do. I mean, for home videos, family videos, one interview conversation, more informal, maybe the iPhone will be a great solution for you. But it still doesn't match up to a dedicated camera. But it's a nice feature, it really is. So that's another thing. The other thing that really has enhanced this year is the overall cameras. So we have the telephoto lens, which can do a 3x zoom now. We have the wide lens, which is increased in size, and then we also have the ultra wide lens as well. So all these lenses have changed and increased in size to definitely help on picture quality. The ultra wide in previous years had a little bit of bending to the edges, the corners of the pictures. Sometimes you really can't tell it, but you can tell that it looks a little bit better this year. So in the 13 and the 13 mini, they now have the cameras from the 12 Pros. So their cameras have been upgraded as well, but they are last year's Pro model cameras. But either model is still really good camera, especially with iPhones and what they do with computational photography and the AI that Apple uses to correct the photos afterwards as well. Lots of good things. Other things that has changed with the iPhone 13 is there is a smaller notch at the top. It's not significant, it's just enough that you can notice that it's not as wide. So unfortunately you don't gain anything with that. You would think with Apple making it a little narrower, you would gain something in the status bar at the top, maybe like something else in the control center. You don't gain anything. It's just to make the notch a little bit smaller. And with that smaller notch is the same front-facing selfie camera that's been used for, I think, since iPhone 10. Tell me in the comments if I'm incorrect on that, but it's been the same selfie camera has been used for several years. I think that's something Apple needs to focus on and upgrade now, since they've spent a lot of time in these cameras. I think it's about time to spend some time on the front camera as well. Points to think about in determining if you want to upgrade. One big feature that is yet to release on the Pro models is ProRes. This is a form of capturing video that exports to professional editing softwares like Premiere, etc. This is a very standard resolution to use to export to get the highest customization to your image and to your video. So this is a feature that isn't out yet. I don't know specifically what version of iOS this will be coming to. It will be some point in iOS 15, just not sure if it's iOS 15.1 or what it will be. But very big point on this feature. If you do want to use this, you cannot use it on the 128 gig model. You can only use it on 256 and above. I think Apple did that because of storage concerns. They thought people would just run through the high 4K full usage of ProRes, because it takes a lot more data to use that feature. So my guess is that they wanted to limit it to phones that definitely had the bigger amount of space. But that could have been resolved by one of my biggest complaints still with this year, and that is still using the Lightning adapter. iPad Pros, the iPad Air, even the new iPad Mini uses USB-C. So Apple, you just give up on the Lightning adapter. You need to move over to USB-C. The transfer rate is much quicker. Now you've got the EU really trying to mandate this on you. So they have to do something by the iPhone 14, in my opinion. So hopefully by iPhone 14, they will make that change over. My guess would be, though, they're probably only going to do it on the Pro models, and you'll still have the Lightning plug on the, let's say, iPhone 14 mini and 14. So if you're holding out for that, I would really wait next year for that. So at the end of this, a couple other things to think about, and that is this device worth upgrading to? I think that really depends on what you're after in this phone. If you want the utmost best cameras, even if you have last year's model, then you probably want to upgrade to this. But if you have last year's model, I really don't think it's a worthy upgrade. Now, if you're even on the iPhone 11, which had the older design cues, more curved design and not squared off body like the new one has, or the 12 has as well, then sure, I think it's a worthy upgrade. But if you're anything on like an iPhone 10, we can see a considerable difference here in iPhone 10 as opposed to the 13. And specs wise, between the 10 and 13 Pro, there's significant changes. Much faster processor, much better cameras, front screen, the glass has gotten stronger as well, and of course Pro resolution. So some people find this after you get used to Pro resolution, you try to go back to a device that doesn't have it anymore. This is something you can really tell. Myself, I can use a phone either way without it. Do I prefer the higher refresh rate? Absolutely. Can I tell it? Yes. I do have a little bit harder problems telling it in the iPhone, but I think that's just because Apple's doing a really good job on adjusting the frame rate depending on what you're looking at. So if you're scrolling through a document really fast, then it will change. But if Apple is really utilizing 120 hertz for, is probably on gaming. I can't know this specifically, but my guess would be on most of the gaming, it's probably maxing out at 120 by default on any game you play. So at the end of the day, do I believe you should get this iPhone? Only if you have an iPhone 10 or maybe an iPhone 11. If you have the 12, I do not think this is worth getting. It totally depends on you and if you really want the best cameras. That's it for today. Catch you in the next one.